WhatsApp, it is a completely different experience.
Different experience. Whenever Poppy went to him from my house.
Oh, really?
Oh,
That's
really?
amazing.
Yeah.
Guys, I think we should jump off, Muma.
Yep, we're at the hour. The event has begun.
We are broadcasting now.
Enjoy.
Bye, guys. See you on the other side. Bye.
All right, so I'm just, okay, we have attendees rolling in. Yes. Okay, we are ready to start. All right, welcome panelists and attendees. My name is Anam Khan. I'm the founder of the NewsRun, and I'm going to be moderating this excellent panel today. And just to give you some quick background about the NewsRun, for those of you who are not familiar with it yet, it's a daily email digital newsletter that provides smart, digestible, and contextualized breakdowns of Pakistan's top news. And I launched it to give Pakistanis around the world an alternative source of news that's clear, concise, to the point, and non-sensationalized. And this event is called Mindful News Consumption, and it's brought to you by the NewsRun in collaboration with the Tempest, which is a global digital media company that empowers tomorrow's leaders and creators and dreamers with unique and intelligent storytelling. And I'm just going to drop both of our links over here in the chat for people to click on if they want to learn more and browse our websites. And I just want to quickly go over why we launched this mindful news consumption campaign. We started it last month together as a partnership, and as a part of this campaign, we've published editorials and hosted Instagram lives and even recorded a mindful meditation video for people who want to take a break from the news. And all of this is centered on the theme of how to approach the news in a mindful way. And that includes like how to detect bias in the news, how to fact check the news on social media, and some things that you can do to take a break from the news if you feel like you really need it. So now the point of this grand finale event is to bring together all these learnings and hear some expert perspectives on how to stay informed while also staying mentally healthy. And I'm really excited to hear from our excellent panel today, who are experts in their respective fields. They'll talk about mindful news consumption in the context of social media, technology, journalism, and mental health. We have Nighat Dad here, who's going to share the social media and technology perspective. We have Alia Chughtai, who's going to share the journalism perspective. And we have Erum Shaikh, who's going to share the mental health perspective. And she herself also has a background in journalism. So I just wanted to, I'm not going to go into too much detail regarding the introductions because whoever is registered has already read about our panelists and read their bios. But I'm going to give Erum Shaikh an introduction here because she is replacing our original panelist, Mahim, who unfortunately couldn't make it because she had a personal emergency. But we're thrilled to have Erum, and she was able to step in at the last minute to share her expertise and experience. And just to quickly tell you a little bit about Erum, she has nearly 10 years of experience as a journalist. And that includes her time at the Express Tribune and Arab News. And for the past year, she's been pursuing a diploma in integrative psychotherapy at TherapyWorks. And she's also head of communications and PR strategy at Create Think Tank. It's a corporate digital agency based in Karachi. And through her work, she aims to center mental health for brands and build awareness through various campaigns. So this event is going to be for approximately an hour, and we're going to try to leave a Q&A in the last 10-15 minutes. But during the event, attendees are welcome to write their questions in the chat box. Not the chat box, in the Q&A box. And so they're all in one place, and we'll get to as many as we can. So I think we are ready to get into it. Panelists, are we ready? Okay. So the first question here to start this off is, and it's for all of you, and we can start like clockwise. There are evident pros and cons to social media, and it allows us to stay informed and stay connected and be enterprising, but it's also addictive. And it's a platform that makes it easy for misinformation to spread. And it can also cause mental exhaustion. So if each of you were to give one pro and one con about social media, what would that one pro and con be for you? And I would really like the audience to plug in their thoughts on the pros and cons on social media and the chat as well, just so we can get a sense of like how people are thinking about this. And Negative, you can start us off.
Sure. So I'll be very quick, and I'll be speaking from an activist point of view that social media allows for activists to come together and amplify their cause, especially in situations where on-ground activism isn't possible, or maybe even dangerous. And as a lawyer, I also see that how our fundamental rights that are enshrined in the Constitution are now being translated into the online spaces as well. So when we talk about civil liberties in the offline space, there are like now chances and option for different stakeholders to translate and interpret those civil liberties into online space. So I think that's one benefit that I see as an activist. I think, again, as an activist, what I have seen over the years, that social media increasingly has proven that it can fall to pressure exerted by powerful and authoritarian regimes. So we have seen how, governments, different governments around the world they have been asking social media companies for certain information, especially when it comes to journalists and activists and political dissidents. And countries like ours, we absolutely have no idea, because there is no transparency and accountability that what kind of information or users' data the companies are giving to the government. So I think this is something very dangerous and a disadvantage that I see when it comes to social media.
That's a really interesting perspective. And Nigga, this is also, I feel like because of the work you've done on digital rights through your Digital Rights Foundation, I'm assuming that you have been exposed to possibly the worst sides of social media as well in terms of cyber harassment. And this is actually something we covered in the NewsRun, and I'll be quick because I want to get to the other panelists. But last year in August, there was a joint statement by Pakistani women journalists and commentators, and they were seeking protection against vicious attacks on social media. And if I remember correctly, you also signed that joint statement. And they were saying that there was a coordinated campaign that is trying to discredit, frighten, and intimidate women working in Pakistan's media space. So I guess if we're talking about cons about social media, that is one thing to also keep in mind. It emboldens people to be unnecessarily aggressive and hostile because they're hidden behind their screens. And especially with against women who are like public figures and have public accounts and are easier to access.
Yeah, no, definitely. And maybe Alia can chime into this more, because she's also a journalist and also active on social media. I think the hate that we have seen, especially women journalists have been facing during COVID, that's just, it's just, I mean, we have seen around the world, women journalists, female politicians, women who are visible and are outspoken. Their work has always been very, very risky when it comes to online spaces. But during COVID, it's like they are, especially when they are covering COVID, governments are just like, they are fake journalists, or and trying to discredit them. And what we have seen with these women journalists, because they have had enough, even though we have a cybercrime law in Pakistan. They just wanted to take an action because nothing was happening even under that law. So I think it raises a lot of questions around, if you have legal remedy, you have authorities, there is a government, but nothing is happening and attacks are still happening coming from the, powerful party or ruling party. And I think that's very concerning.
Yeah, I think this is also a good segue to get Alia's journalist perspective as well. So Alia, is this something that you've also encountered or experienced?
I mean, just to sort of, I'm going to step back for a second. I'm going to reiterate what Nigat was talking about earlier about how it allows, the fundamental rights for people to be able to have the space online. And some of the most beautiful things that I have found on social media has been the voice of the underdog. I think it's so important that when social media used correctly and most powerfully, it really does make a significant change, whether it's about, there's so much of the stories of, like, for instance, of what's happening on the Gujar Nala, the evictions, and, what's happening in Bahria town. We would not know those stories unless somebody was documenting and putting those out on social media, just because, that's not a space that would be fed by anybody, right? So I think it is beautiful in some aspect that it is, you get, it's important to get those stories out. But on the con side of it, there's so much misinformation that gets fed as well. But added on top of it is the cyber harassment that women journalists get for putting out stories which men don't like or certain groups don't like. And I have found that majority of the people who are the most aggressive are not just men, but it's actually women. Most of the hate that I get on my Twitter, or even on Facebook, majority of it is women, who are brainwashed to believe in certain, certain things, or they don't like the fact that what you're talking about. I don't think it's just a gender specific thing. I think a lot of people experience men harassing, but I've also gotten a lot of harassment from women as well. The profanity that comes from them. It's not just limited to men. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and I feel like this is a subject that we can dedicate an entire other event to, just trying to figure out why other women are turning on each other. I asked myself that numerous times, and I actually think that this is something I would want to do a deep dive into in the future. But
yeah, it's definitely worth doing a deep dive into sort of understanding what happens. But no, I mean, everything that Nigat is saying, I completely agree with her. Like, the amplification of voices is the most important. And we're seeing that right now in Gaza as well, that the stories that are coming out from Gaza, we wouldn't know those unless, there are people sitting there on ground, sitting plugged into social media, who are uploading these videos, who are uploading these Twitter posts and stuff. And it's so heartbreaking. You see these people from Gaza every single night, they post their goodbyes on Twitter because they're not sure if they're going to make it to the next morning, right? And it's because of these people that we know the stories that are coming out from a space that is so constrained and is so limited. If it wasn't for social media, how would we know these stories?
That's a really good point.
So there is the power of social media. I completely believe in it. But what goes along with it, and I'm sure we'll discuss that a little bit further down the line, is the misinformation that comes.
Absolutely. And yes, you're right. We are actually going to get into that during the event. And Erum, I did not pronounce your name right. What do you think are the pros and cons of social media?
I mean, taking the lead, from what Nigat and Alia have both said, yes, the beauty of social media is that we've never had access to information like we do today, and we've somehow managed to get somewhat of an equal playing field. But what it also does is it gives us it sort of equips people with this false sense of entitlement and false sense of power, which is then used, sometimes against people and sometimes to spread misinformation that leads to, much bigger things than we realize, because a lot of our population exists on social media. It isn't limited to a certain amount of people anymore. It's many people, and we have to be aware of what we put out there. We have to know that with power comes a certain sense of responsibility. Excuse me, sorry, that was my nephew who just walked in.
Oh,
But
no worries.
we don't own the responsibility that comes with it. And being behind a screen gives us that false sense of entitlement and power. And misinformation also makes us feel like we are correct. We know what we know, and what we know is right. We don't give space for conversation.
Because you saw it somewhere online in an Instagram post, so
and it becomes facts.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. We won't pause, and that's something that mental health really pushes you to do. And it's not something you need, to go to therapy for. It's very simple. You pause before you spread anything, even if you know that it's coming from a credible source. Verify it. There is responsibility that comes with social media, and in order to really take advantage of the pros, you have to take advantage. You have to understand the con.
Absolutely. And you guys set the stage for like the next couple of questions that I've got lined up here. And Alia, we are getting to misinformation now. And I would like to start with you because you are currently a professional journalist as well. So how can news readers who are not professional journalists, just regular people, train themselves to detect misinformation or bias in the news they're reading, whether it's on a website or television or a podcast or especially social media?
So what I tell everybody who I know, who I'm close friends with, is read multiple sources of the same story. And be careful of the websites that you are reading into, because if it's something which is altnews123.bt, please don't, just shut it. Just move away. You have to know your sources that you're listening to. You have to know your sources that you're reading, the videos that you're watching. There's so many contentious videos that make the rounds. And I'll give you an example of like Nas Daily, who's a Zionist, who has been promoting Israeli supremacy as far as, this entire, Palestine-Israel conflict is concerned. I hate that word conflict because it's not a conflict. There's an aggressor and there's the oppressed, right? It's not, I don't agree to the word conflict at all, because conflict means it's two parties of equal power having a power play. This is not a power play. So anyway, the fact of the matter is that, you've got things like Nas Daily, or you've got like other videos. Videos end up being the most. My uncle called me, by the way. I'm sorry, just brought it up. My uncle called me over Eid and explained to me that how he's watched a video that explains that Corona ka jo ilaj hai maine dhund liya. And I was like, what? I was like, okay. हाँ, मैंने एक वीडियो देखी, उसमें वो कह रहे कि एस्पिरिन खा लो, एस्पिरिन से कोरोना जो होता है वो भाग जाता है. I'm sitting with my head in my hand saying, I want to kill myself. Like, I really want to kill myself. But here's somebody who relies on WhatsApp for his news, and somebody has manipulated a video of some supreme idiocy and is doing the rounds, and this person believes it. What do you do with this person? This person ought to have checked on a couple of other websites, should have checked a couple other places on YouTube to make sure that you're not falling prey to the propaganda or to the nonsense that's being spread. And also know your media sources. Most media places have a bias. This is the reality. You want to talk about the integrity of journalism. You want to talk about, we're there to tell the truth. And Erum can, she's got a journalism background, she can back me up in this, but every media organization, especially the Western side, has media biases. There's certain agendas that you are just sort of, it's kind of so you're socially conditioned into believing. So watch your sources, please verify the videos, see where the main source is coming from. On certain images, just do a Google check from your phone. It's not that complicated. It's just that it's amazing some of the WhatsApp that I receive from people, and I'm sure we all do, we all receive these insane videos and, memes and stuff that people think are real.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely relate to that. there are these long essays I get in my WhatsApp chat by some self-appointed
Forward
expert.
Forward.
Yeah, and I'm just like, who is this person? And I actually don't acknowledge it. I guess over time I've trained myself to not believe everything I read on social media, but that's also because of the work I've had to do on the NewsRun. But for people who aren't working in media, I guess sometimes they just don't they don't have time, or they don't feel like they need to take out the time. They're already bombarded with information. They just take whatever they get and run with it then.
And that's really dangerous, because and that's what my advice to everybody is, that whenever you read something which is, outrageous or could be outrageous, or even if it's just regular stuff, even if it's regular updates about something, read a couple of different sources. Like there was something a couple of days ago that I got a lot of flack for on Twitter. It's about Faisal Eidi going to Gaza to take aid from Pakistan. My question was, how is he getting in? What is this headline? How is he getting in? There's no crossing that allows anybody in. Humanitarian aid hasn't been allowed in days, weeks, months. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, I was actually wondering that too.
Nonsense. It's complete nonsense. He's not going to get in. If he gets in, I really hope he does. Allah kare, he gets in and the people get their, the kind of aid and the kind of help that he can give. I really hope and pray that happens. But are you joking? Like, what kind of headline is that? That, Eidi goes to Palestine. No, that's not happening, guys. And when I questioned it, I got a barrage of abuse on, how can you question Eidi? I'm not questioning Eidi. I'm questioning the organization who thought it was okay to publish this, because it's not true. And then later on that same night, Faisal Eidi sat in a program and he explained that how in 2011 or 14, one or the other, he had gone with Eidi Saab himself and stood at Rafah crossing for 14 days trying to get in, and they didn't let them in at that time either. And things were better back then versus now.
Yeah,
I think it's just about how you're contextualizing the news, really. If you see something on Times of Karachi, no disrespect, but just please cross-verify it. Check it somewhere else. Just check another one or two sites and see that other people are also reporting it or not.
Okay, I usually don't get my news from there, but I'm going to keep that in mind for the future.
Some people do. That's absolutely okay. We're all about supporting the underdog.
All right, this is great. Erum, so what do you have to say about this?
I could not agree more with everything that Alia just said. We have so many examples in front of us. I mean, look at the video for Aurat March. That was, when people ask questions about how the brain works and how we use our conscience and unconscious levels of information, how we access that information, it's so interesting, because it's like exercising your mind, and we've forgotten how to do that. When you don't exercise your mind, you employ all those tools that you have been conditioned to employ, whether it's from childhood or through the organization that you're working at or through a relationship that you're in. All of those things build up and condition you to have a certain set of beliefs. So the fact that someone manipulates a video and our first reaction is, oh my God, they did that, that's terrible, as opposed to, wait, did they actually do that? Why don't I check? They're worlds apart, and we won't actually exercise our brain to verify things. And it is, even as a journalist, like Alia said, everyone has a bias. Everyone is pushing an agenda. It's whether it's Western, we're surrounded by it. And it is very important to exercise the God-gifted brain that you do have. You have to take a look at the bigger picture. For example, even with Gaza, what is happening there, to say, oh my God, it is Shudism and this and that. Take a look at the bigger picture. Understand why there is aggression there. What happened there? Have you read up on the history? Are you going to? Probably not. because social media is giving you bullet points to regurgitate at your whim. Why do the additional work?
Sorry,
That
I'm
is
cutting you off. Apparently, I think yesterday or day before, there was an M&A apparently who quoted a quote of Hitler's, which he never said, which apparently is not a Hitler quote, but she passed it off as a Hitler quote, you know, being anti-Semitic, being inside a parliament. I'm sorry, you can be pro-Palestinian rights, but you don't have to be anti-Semitic. Those two things are not mutually like, I mean, come on, please. Why am I having to explain this? Like, you know, but it's awful, you know, and this poor woman, and I'm just going to put it down to the fact that she probably saw that quote on social media. She saw a Facebook post and she said, oh, Hitler ne ye bola tha. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I've seen quite a few people misquoting that.
Of course. And you know, and what is terrifying is it'll come from your top leadership. And that is to 90% of the population a very, very credible source. So it is very important to own the kind of information that you put out there. And that's another reason why social media can become a crutch, because it's very easy to put information out there and not own it, you know, and put it in someone else. Even with journalism, a lot of times it's like, you know, putting it in someone else's mouth, but you have to own the information that you put out there. And if you own it, you will have to do the work that goes behind putting that information out there. So, you know, whether it's a clickbait headline, you know, what, like Alia just said, you know, about Eid. I mean, even journalists employ tactics that they know will psychologically affect their consumers, their readership, bring them in. But it is my responsibility as a reader to not buy everything every Tom, Dick, or Harry is telling me. I have to. In fact, you know, if religion is the only uniting force, then even our religion teaches you to check, recheck, question everything. So why
people conveniently forget that part?
Absolutely. No, it's a selective amnesia that we suffer from.
Yeah, no. These are really good points. And I also was thinking about adding more, but I don't want to take up too much time because we're already at 30 minutes. So I want to move on to the mental health side of things, Erum, and I want to start with you here. Studies show that there's a direct correlation between consuming negative news headlines and mental health. And the situation has gotten even worse with the pandemic and escalating violence in various parts of the world, like Afghanistan, Gaza, and what was happening with the Black Lives Matters movement. So how do you strike a balance between staying informed and also just safeguarding your mental well-being?
Okay, so for me, I think the most important point to highlight here is to consume everything in moderation. It becomes very difficult for journalists to unplug from work, but it is also very, very important for us as individuals to understand what in therapy we call our circle of influence. Your circle of influence is basically, I can tell A, B, C something, and that information will get from A to C. But beyond that is out of my control. Acknowledging the fact that something is beyond your control also, it also liberates you, but it also, you know, empowers you with the knowledge that this is how much impact I can have, and beyond this is not much I can do. So there's lots of people, especially when it comes to conflict, you know, who sort of think that, oh my gosh, you know, those people have it worse than I do. But that is not, in that moment, for you to be saying that is not healthy for you mentally. It is very important to acknowledge you have the feelings that you have. You have the emotions. You need to recognize and acknowledge those emotions in order to ever work through them. The first step is acknowledging it. And, you know, there's lots of different ways, understanding your circle of influence, but also setting boundaries for yourself. I, for example, love routine. So I will ensure that I will set out a specific amount of time during which I will consume news. If there is a headline that does negatively impact me, and the likelihood is very high because trauma lives in our body, I seek therapy. But for those who can't, somatic therapy is very, very helpful. But it is also very important to talk through the trauma. Why am I having this? What is that feeling? Label the feeling, understand it. If you have this rush of emotions and you can't detect what's happening, something is amiss. That means your body, your mind is asking you to push back, pause, take a break, step away from what you're doing, and give yourself the time and attention you need. So a lot of people like working out, some people like writing. Your circle of influence, for example, would mean I know I can't help that person who's depressed in the US with COVID. However, the 30 people that I do know, I can help. I can speak to them. I can do something about it. Understanding that you can do something in that moment when you feel hopeless is very empowering. So if I am upset or angry or depressed about Gaza or another war or COVID, I will employ the tools that I have in my capacity. I will write, I will get something published, hopefully that would be great. Or I would paint, I would read, I would read up on the history and inform the people within my circle of influence. I would attend a locally organized protest, something that allows me to expel those emotions in a healthy manner, not by sitting behind a keyboard and letting out information that sometimes can be damaging to you more than to anyone else.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good approach. In a way, I think what you're trying to say is you're channeling your stress and trying to make
Absolutely.
it into something more, I guess, productive is the right word to use.
And manageable.
Manageable.
It can become very overwhelming to think of a war that is taking place in you as this one tiny person not being able to do something about it. It can be very empowering to know that you actually can. But you need to give yourself that time to pause, take a break, think about what it is that you can do.
Okay, and Alia and Nighat, I also want to hear about your, any best practices you have in place to protect your mental or emotional well-being, especially when there is a very stressful news cycle.
Well, the thing is, my editor said something to me about a week, 10 days ago. I was working on this really intense piece regarding COVID in the second wave in India. And it was really terrifying because the videos that were coming from there, the pictures that our correspondents were sending us that we had to compile into, more data-led visualizations and stuff. And it was really heavy stuff, right? It's like people being turned away for oxygen, people dying at the doorsteps. And I was having very severe anxiety because I've been very COVID conscious for the past year and a half. I've barely left my house. I haven't attended conferences. I'm a high risk person anyway for COVID, so I've been super duper careful. I have friends who called me CDC, and then we had somebody, who lives in one of the rooms downstairs. They got COVID, and they was like, "Oh my God, there's been a breach in CDC." It was such a huge deal that there was somebody in the house who had COVID. You have to take a deep breath. Like what Erum is saying, you've got to find what works for you. You've got to step back. You've got to do something, whether it's playing with your dogs or going for a run or putting yourself in some kind of system, Erum used the word routine. I like to say system. Rather than working out what I should do, I like to watch, bubblegum TV, and that's one of the pitfalls that ever since I've started doing more intensive journalism, I can't watch serious or heavy duty television shows. Like The Handmaid's Tale is freaking me out this year. I can't watch it. I really
don't
can't
watch that if you need a break.
Right? Because it's stressing me out so much. I saw an episode last night, which I fast forwarded to get to the end, just so I know what happened. And okay, all right, great. All right, this is what happened. At least I know. I'm not going to watch it anymore, So whatever works for you to be able to step back, take a deep breath, and then come back. Because as a journalist, whether you're reporting something on Gaza or you're reporting on a bomb blast that has happened somewhere in Pakistan, and Pakistan went through a very difficult 10 years when war on terror was, at its height. And so many of our journalists were so badly, embroiled in PTSD, and there wasn't much help at that time. And this is where all of this mental health awareness came from at that time, because there were so many people who were so badly affected by all the bomb blasts and the dead bodies and whatnot and the other. Being a journalist at that time, telling the story, is the most powerful thing that you can do, right? Because that is your way of giving back, by imparting a story back to the people. So because you're providing information, and information is power. So you have to realize as a journalist what your power is. But once you've done the task, step away. Step away, go play with your dogs, play with your cat, go cook something, go watch a stupid television show, watch a stupid movie, disconnect, come back and fight another day. Because the news is always going to be bad. It's always going to be bad. There's always going to be kids dying. I cannot tell you right now, one of my tasks that I have right now is I'm compiling a death list. Like of all the dead people and the names that pop up on Twitter, or what's verified from one source to a second source to a third source. I have an Excel document of 3 lines happening right now. And I have to paste in links of how many people have died in Palestine right now. It's a horrible job, but it's also such a privilege. It's such a privilege to be able to be at the helm of some place that is listening, and you're getting people's voices across. So information is power, but you have to safeguard yourself. When you're done with the day, step away. Literally.
I'm sorry to cut you off. But what Alia is doing is exactly right, is setting her boundaries. Post work, I will disconnect. I'm going to give myself an hour away, an hour for me. That could mean watching a mindless show. It could mean drawing. It could mean spending 2 hours cuddling up with my puppy. It is what I do for me to give myself perspective. Life will go on. Work will not stop. You have to make space for yourself to feel safe.
And I'm sorry, I want to come back. I mean, as a journalist, you're going to have to work on Eid. You're going to have to work on important people's birthdays. It sucks, but you're doing an important job. Sorry, Megan, I'll pass it to you.
No, what I just wanted to say, actually echoing both of what you have said, I think Erum said that you really need to acknowledge that jab aap, like you feel that there is a fatigue, anxiety, or you are being anxious while consuming this news. And I think acknowledgement is very important. There's so many hurdles, even acknowledging that. And I'll be saying this as an activist because हमारी surroundings हमें हमेशा ये बताती हैं कि आपने बस चलते जाना है, करते रहना है, रुकना नहीं है. And like no one has ever told us, even in our activist circles or human rights circle, that you really need to take a pause at times and like take good care of yourself, and it's okay to take a break. Like no one has ever told us this. And of course जब हमें पता ही नहीं है कि कोई आपको जज नहीं करेगा, जरूरी नहीं कि आप सारे प्रोटेस्ट पे जाएं while you are feeling really overwhelmed, right? And I think it's okay to detach yourself for some time and do something that makes you happy. I mean, whatever Erum and Alia has just said. लेकिन what I do, couple of things जो कि मैंने पिछले 1 साल में कुछ चीजें की हैं. एक तो ये कि COVID also gave me, I mean, I shouldn't say this, but gave me an opportunity to feel grounded, because बहुत सी ऐसी चीजें जो मैं पिछले इतने सालों से इग्नोर कर रही थी अपनी हेल्थ के हवाले से, मुझे अब लगना शुरू हो गया था कि मैं अपना ख्याल नहीं करूंगी तो जो लोग मुझे रीच आउट करते हैं सर्वाइवर्स, मैं उनका कैसे ख्याल रख पाऊंगी जबकि मैं खुद इतनी ओवरवेल्म्ड हूं. So I really wanted to give time to myself and to think about my own mental health and physical health also, because the burnout started impacting my own physical health. But also like a couple of things that I do कि मैंने social media के notifications सब अपनी settings में जाके उनको disable कर दिया है. So like every single time if someone tweets at me or tags me or तो वो मुझे उसकी लाइक तुरंत करके कोई नोटिफिकेशन नहीं आता, until और unless मैं जाऊं अपने मोबाइल में घुसूं देखूं तब मुझे पता चले। एंड रात को अभी वो मैं कर रही हूँ, मुझसे अभी हुआ नहीं है कि कोशिश में मैं करती हूँ कि सोने से पहले अपने मोबाइल को अपने बेड से कहीं दूर रखूं, जो कि बार बार मेरा दिल जो है ना वो मुझे करता है कि नहीं उठ के जाओ, वापस ले आओ, देखते देखते और सो जाओ। अभी आई एम स्ट्रगलिंग, बट आई थिंक समथिंग दैट इज नॉट इम्पॉसिबल। लॉट्स ऑफ पीपल आर लाइक ओ मैंने अलार्म लगाना होता, भाई मोबाइल से पहले भी हमारे अलार्म्स होते थे, वी कैन एक्चुअली गो बैक टू दैट। सो आई थिंक लाइक दीज स्मॉल लिटिल थिंग्स हमारे बिहेवियर को चेंज करने की बहुत जरूरत है, खासतौर पे। और मैं कहूंगी कि कोविड पहले भी हम लोग ये बातें करते थे मेंटल हेल्थ और कंजम्पशन जो इंटरनेट कंटेंट की है, लेकिन मुझे लगता है कोविड में तो मतलब बहुत ही शदीद किस्म का हर चीज डिजिटल उस पे आ गई है। एक्टिविस्ट और जर्नलिस्ट के लिए तो खास तौर पे मतलब वी आर, मैंने जैसे कहा कि एक्सरसाइजिंग आर right to freedom of association and assembly also in the online space। तो हर वक्त ही अजीब सा एंजाइटी वाला मुझे लगता है माहौल है, और it's okay to take a break, it's okay not to like participate। इतना कोई वो नहीं है, जब तक आप खुद को नहीं देखेंगे मेरा नहीं ख्याल आप लोगों की मदद कर पाएंगे।
No, yeah, I really like all of the suggestions you guys gave, and I feel like in some form or another I've tried to employ most of them. It hasn't worked out that well for me. Like the phone one, for keeping your phone in the other room before you go to bed. I did that twice and I felt so refreshed, but then I said, oh, I need my alarm, and I use that alarm excuse. But now I think I'm just gonna get an old-fashioned alarm clock. But so Nagid, now for this next question, I want to start with you, because and this is related to how we started our discussion at the beginning of this event. Often people find themselves caught up in debates about news and events online, which we have all seen on Twitter, I'm sure. And sometimes that results in trolling and name slinging, and that also creates more stress. So how can users recognize when it's conducive to engage in a conversation and when it's time to just walk away?
Yeah, so I think it's it actually depends, like there are times where like trolls who attack me, or I see them attacking other journalists and activists, even with huge following, and I think it depends on you how much energy you have to engage with them, right? And sometimes that this has also become a trend that usually people who troll you, especially coordinated trolling and coordinated online attacks, they're like ट्रोल अकाउंट्स एक्चुअली जो कि इसी पर्पस के लिए बनाए गए हैं और वो इस्तेमाल किए जाते हैं। सो आई थिंक देयर कपल ऑफ थिंग्स दैट पीपल कैन लुक इनटू के हाउ मेनी फॉलोअर्स डज दिस पर्सन हैव, डज दिस अकाउंट इवन सीम रियल, या इज इट अ बॉट और इज इट अ ह्यूमन बॉट। और स्मॉलर अकाउंट्स जैसे मैंने कहा कि दे आर मोर लाइकली टू जस्ट बीइंग ट्रोल अकाउंट्स, और वो बनाए इसीलिए जाते हैं टू क्रिएट ट्रबल एंड कॉज हार्म टू यू ऑनलाइन। तो समटाइम्स इंटरेक्शन को इतना यूजफुल नहीं होता, बट आई थिंक एक और चीज ये है कि यू कैन ऑल्सो गो बैक टू पर्सन्स प्रीवियस सोशल मीडिया एक्टिविटी, राइट, एंड बिफोर डिसाइडिंग कि इससे इंगेज करना है या नहीं करना, बिकॉज समटाइम्स उनकी आप अगर जाएंगे सोशल मीडिया हिस्ट्री पे तो वो यही लगेगा कि उनका काम ही बेसिकली ऑनलाइन आके यही करना है, लोगों को ट्रोल करना है। तो फिर आई डोंट सी एनी any reason to engage with those trolls or respond to them. Sometimes अब मैं नहीं करती हूँ, लेकिन पहले मैं करती थी कि I used to troll the trolls कभी कभी and I say भाई मतलब चलो मैं I'm feeling like trolling the trolls, and I think it's okay to do that. Sometimes you like to engage with them in a humorous way, and it's another way of creating alternative discourse उस certain issue के ऊपर। But yeah, I mean, I think ये चंद चीजें हैं जो आपको खुद ही डिसाइड करनी होती हैं कि आपने genuinely ये बंदा आपसे डिसएग्री कर रहा है या ये जस्ट आपको तंग करने के लिए कर रहा है. And sometimes, you know, मैंने देखा बहुत से ऐसे इन अकाउंट्स जिनकी मैसिव फॉलोइंग होती है, वो उस ट्रोल अकाउंट की ट्वीट को जिसके 11 फॉलोअर्स हैं उसको कोट ट्वीट करके जवाब दे रहे होंगे. आई एम लाइक, व्हाई यू आर गिविंग हिम सो मच ऑक्सीजन? मतलब उसको क्यों इतनी तवज्जो आप बाकी लोगों से भी दिला रहे हैं? तो या तो ऐसे ही जवाब दे दें अगर बहुत दिल करे, बट उसको इतनी तवज्जो तो ना दिलाएं.
I feel like that would fuel the troll then, right? Encourage them.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel like sometimes it's just instinctive. You need to know when there's just no reasoning with someone online. But Erum, what do you have to say about this?
So, you know how you mentioned fueling the troll? It's so, you know, again, going back to how much social media fuels our sense of entitlement and gives us this false sense of power. There is an aspect of narcissism that does come in where you do feel like you have the right to troll somebody because that person's opinion differs from yours. In many cases, engaging with someone who is not giving you or is not even aware that they're not giving you space to have dialogue is unnecessary. It is giving yourself mental stress for no reason. You know, jaise bolte hain, and they've been saying it for a very long time. We just choose not to employ it in our lives. But when you go on a plane, they say that in case of an emergency, put the oxygen mask on yourself first and then on the passenger next to you, or even a child. If you do not take care of your own mental health, you cannot help someone else. So it is great to see that, you know, Nigat is taking care, and it's our responsibility to take care of ourselves. So when it comes to engaging with people, if you understand that a healthy debate can come out of this engagement, do it. If you think you can learn something from it, do it. If you think you can inform someone, do it. But if those criteria are not being met, do not give yourself the additional headache of taking on that stress, because it is traumatic to hear or read some of the things people throw at you. And people do it without realizing that on the other side of the screen is another human being. It's not just a, you know, an electronic piece on which you're typing and it's going into thin air. It's going into another person. You don't realize that. So before you are, you know, the subject of that attack, guard yourself, create that boundary. If there's space, take it. If there isn't, don't engage.
No, that's really good advice. And Alia.
I don't really have much to add into. These girls have said everything, you know, and I think that there's a certain amount that and I'm guilty of this myself, that you troll the trolls just for the sake of humor, but be very mindful of when it starts consuming your life. You know, it's all shits and giggles for a bit, but then, you know, it can get quite out of control if you let it consume you. And you let every single notification that you're getting on your inbox, whether it's on Facebook or on Twitter, it can become very, very overwhelming. I think I've gotten a lot better now where I switch off the phone, and my phone is always on silent, because the anxiety of the ting of the phone is too much for me. I can't deal with it. My phone is always on silent, and it works much better for me. The phone is a tool for me to get in touch with people, not the other way around. You know, you can message me and I will get back to you. It's fairly simple. It's about protecting yourself and safeguarding a space where don't engage into somebody who's not going to listen. I do believe where somebody is wrong, where someone is presenting a wrong fact or is misinformation, yeah, please do call them out. You know, do call them out, but be respectful, be polite. There's no reason to be obnoxious. There's certain ways to go about it. You'd want someone, if you did a mistake that you posted online, you'd want someone to be respectful to you too. There's certain ways to handle things. And put the phone away, guys, both of you. Put the phone away at night.
Yeah, I definitely need to work on that. Yeah, I guess some things that I do, even though, because when you're working in the news business especially, I guess sometimes I wonder how you can take a break from the news and give yourself some mental space when it's your job and it's something you have to do around the clock. And then in terms of dealing with aggression on social media, I guess that's not something I've personally experienced, but I guess sometimes I just don't understand what drives people to just unnecessarily pick fights online with complete strangers or with people who they can easily just have some productive dialogue with, but they choose not to. And I really do think that social media makes it easy to be that hostile, because I am so sure that if these people were speaking to you face to face, they would not say half the things they say that they only have the courage to say online.
You're absolutely right. Remove the screen, let people speak face to face, and half the aggression will fall out, because you realize that it's another human being. And another thing that I just wanted to add as a last minute was that in lots of cases, it is very easy for our ego also to sort of get triggered, you know, when you feel like someone is questioning your sort, like it's happened with me where I've been like, I know where I'm coming from. And then I've had to sort of step back and be like, okay, but this person does not know that I know where I'm coming from. Perhaps I can explain that, you know, identifying that your ego is also being triggered. And that is one of the reasons you're taking this defensive or hostile tone towards somebody can be very helpful, you know, in not doing those things.
Yeah, and I think now that we are like at the last 10 minutes, I do want to finish with some questions that we're getting from the audience, and it's pretty related to what we were just talking about. So it's going to be pretty much a continuation of the discussion, and whoever wants to chime in can. So we've gotten a lot of questions here, actually. Just give me a moment. I need to sift through this. Okay. Wow, it looks like what you said resonated with a lot of people, guys. Okay, there. Okay, so let's ask, let me see. Okay. Oh, sorry, guys. Just okay, so since this is a question from Misha Khan, since the seminar is on mindful news consumption, where does the panel think the ethical line should be drawn between news consumption, social media activism versus putting the phone away when it all gets too much, especially in light of the events in Palestine where people are being urged to share as much as possible?
Can I answer this?
Yeah, anyone can.
Yeah. So because we're in a situation in Gaza where, you know, people are literally sitting inside their homes and waiting to be killed, you know, you can't look away. This is not the time to look away, but you do need to get your sleep, because your social media activism isn't going to be of any good, and you're not going to be able to find good material. You're not going to be able to write well if the next morning you have not gotten any sleep. Right? I mean, I've been up for days on end. I've been on the evening and night shift and compiling, like, you know, information here and keeping an eye out for things. So I'm very inundated, but I had to go on to the evening shift rather than doing a 24-hour cycle, because that's not humanly possible. So you've got to take that time out for yourself. You've got to get your rest. You've got to get your sleep. You will get up in the morning and you will start posting again. It's important to amplify the voices. It's very important to make sure that your message is consistent and you're causing more and more awareness, whether you're an activist or you're a journalist, but you've got to get your rest. You can't be on a 24-hour cycle for 7 days a week. It's just not possible.
Yeah, Nagat, Erum, do any of you want to add to that?
Absolutely. I think Alia is absolutely correct. And I also feel like it is very important to maybe, it is okay to ask for help when you feel things are too much and you want to cope with everything that is happening. But when deciding which way to go, it really is a very personal call to make. You have to really understand whether you have the capacity now after an entire day to still take in more information that is being thrown at you, because it does stay with you. Trauma does live inside you. If you're not going to address it tonight, after reading that really harrowing story, you will have to wake up in the morning and feel those feelings again and possibly address it then or at a later stage. So it does have a way of catching up. So don't be under the assumption that just because you've read it now and sort of like pushed it to the back of your mind that it won't come back. It very much has the likelihood to do so. Seeking help, and of course, you know, talking to yourself, talking through things, sitting with the emotion is very important. And for journalists, in fact, you know, Mahim, the panelist, she'd actually set up a therapy line, you know, at CEJ in Karachi and in Quetta, which is offering free therapy to journalists. So if you're a journalist and that is something that you know you need, please, you know, take advantage of it.
Okay, and then there's another question we got here by Mikhail Shaikh. I completely agree with the idea of channeling your emotions and taking care of your mental health, but I still think it's a relatively new concept in today's world and not as spoken about. How do we introduce ideas like these in households or areas where mental health isn't as spoken about or disregarded, where people feel pressure to take care of themselves or seek help from others because no one around them accepts the idea of mental health? And this is for anyone can take this.
So yes, the one thing that comes along with mental health or the, you know, understanding mental health is also understanding the fact that at this point, there's a large taboo aspect attached to it. Mental health is not understood enough for people to openly talk about it. Now the culture is changing and we are coming to a point where generations younger and older are acknowledging that mental trauma is real and in fact can have physical implications in the long run. You know, there are scientific studies that have actually proven that you know, domestic households in which women are either abused or, you know, go through various anxieties are likely to develop MS in an older age. So mental health, if not taken care of, does you know, impact your physical health as well. Speaking about it is one way to tackle the fact that it is taboo, but to speak about it, you have to read up on it. You have to understand it yourself and, you know, again, take up the responsibility of speaking about it mindfully.
No, and I feel like slowly and gradually there are more resources like this becoming available in Pakistan. And Nighat, I think the Digital Rights Foundation Cyber Harassment Helpline is something that does do that. And I remember covering this last year, actually, when I learned about it for the first time. It's available 5 days a week, correct? From 9 to 5. And it provides mental health counseling to people who call, it's a toll number.
Yeah.
Yes. And
so the toll number is 0800 39393. It's 5 days a week, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Hopefully we'll be going 7 days a week because we are getting a lot of calls and it's pretty overwhelming for the helpline team as well to deal with them during those particular hours. Yeah.
So I know that there's obviously some discretion that comes with this, but I just want to generally ask before I get to the next question, what are some of the common problems that people are calling about?
Yeah, so the most of the time when reach out, especially young women and girls, they even don't have an idea that they are, you know, suffering from a mental health trauma. And when they call us, so there's this one complaint that is like massive in Pakistan when it comes to cyber harassment. It's basically blackmailing someone over their intimate images and videos. इसकी सबसे ज़्यादा हमें complaint आती है, और अक्सर लड़कियां जब हमें कॉल करती हैं, and not just लड़कियां, I'm talking about sexual minorities as well, when they call us, they are like, I don't have any other option. If you won't resolve this issue, I'm gonna commit suicide. And you know, that's where we, you know, like our mental health counselor comes in, और वो उनके साथ proper, you know, counseling session होते हैं, and then we try to bring them into a state where they can take an informed decision, because when survivor and victim reach out to us, हम उसको नहीं बता सकते कि उसने क्या करना है. तो यही सबसे ज्यादा हुआ था. एंड आई थिंक द सैड पार्ट इज दैट लोगों को पता ही नहीं होता कि यू नो इस वक्त वो कितने शदीद ट्रॉमा से गुजर रहे हैं. तो उनको इवन ये भी बताना, उस पर भी वो गुस्सा हमसे कर जाते हैं कि मैं आपसे कुछ पूछ रही हूँ, आप मुझे कुछ बता रही हैं. आई डोंट वांट टू स्पीक टू अ मेंटल हेल्थ काउंसलर, आई वांट टू स्पीक टू समबडी हु कैन रिजॉल्व दिस इशू एज सून एज पॉसिबल. सो आई थिंक ये एक हम लोगों को चैलेंज आता है. But yeah, Helpline is doing a lot of work around mental well-being. But yeah, it's a huge challenge. People don't even recognize that, you know, they have some issue, and sometimes they even get offended. Okay, why you are saying this to me? I'm, you know, perfectly fine. So yeah.
That's an interesting insight. Yeah, because I guess I don't have a background in mental health. I'm not really qualified to give advice from that perspective, but I think what I do understand is that usually with mental health counseling, counselors try to help people walk through what their problems are and help them identify what they're struggling with. I guess immediately solving the problem is not something that I think is like what happens when you talk to a therapist or a counselor. And so it's really interesting to hear that Negat, with the people who are calling the helpline, they've reached a point where they just want immediate solutions, and sometimes that's not always possible. And so we're at the hour, but there are 1 or 2 more questions here that I really want to share. Is it okay if we go about 10 minutes over or 5 minutes over? Okay. All right. So we have one question here from Bilal Mustakan. He said, we've been aware of the Palestinian struggle since 1948, but after more than 70 years and 2 intifadas, nothing meaningful has been done. How do you think things will change now, keeping in mind that people have the power of social media, and the residents threatened with expulsion are also sharing stories and posts live from Palestine?
I think something that everybody is saying, especially people who are Palestinian and, you know, journalists who are in Gaza right now or in the West Bank, what everybody is saying that this time it feels different. You know, this time you've got worldwide protests happening. We made a map the other day that had about 72 different locations across the world that had simultaneous protests. You've got halls of Congress where people are talking about not passing a bill for not sending military aid for the 716 million or whatever dollars it is. You know, these kind of things have never happened before. Is it going to resolve immediately? Probably not. But the fact of the matter is that you've got Jewish people coming out and making TikTok videos and talking about equality and justice for Palestinians. You've got, you know, representatives in the House of Congress talking about not sending any more military aid, and, you know, US needs to stop being complicit in what's happening with the Palestinians. It is different. It is different. This is not happened before. So there's plenty to be hopeful about. I completely understand your helplessness, because you're sitting in a country so far away. The only thing that you're doing is by posting on social media and spreading awareness, which, if you think about it, every single person that sees it on your feed will probably share it on further. So the message is getting passed. So you are not being helpless. You're not as useless as you think it is, you know? use the hashtags, use the ways to go around censorship. That's been a huge problem, you know? Censorship on Instagram and Facebook, on Twitter, it's been a huge problem. You know, there's so many people putting up ways to go around censorship. Use it. Amplify the voices. Keep sharing. I found this great video earlier today about this woman sing-songing about the entire history of Palestine, and I've been sharing it nonstop. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It's a sea shanty rhyming video. Oh my God.
No, actually, someone just in one of the WhatsApp groups, someone shared your tweet, where you have posted that video. So I was like, all right, not all WhatsApp groups are same.
Yeah, so the thing is that it's such an amazing video. Like, so social media can be used for really good. I mean, all of this young lady, Emma 101, whoever she is, God bless her. She's taken 70, 75, or no, actually more than that. She's taken history all the way back to the late 1800s to when the British divided up Palestine for colonizing, and taken it to present day, and you've made it consumable for the teenager. Wow, that's never happened before. There's so much to be hopeful about. I would not feel helpless. I think this time is different.
Yeah, I would also add that I think it's also important for us to remind ourselves that we are living in a COVID time, right? And a lot of people, they have transitioned from online space to offline space to online spaces. So, you know, digital spaces have become really, really crucial and important. And a lot of people are on digital spaces now. So even when you are tweeting about this, you know, you are arting, you are resharing all these messages and posts, you are actually amplifying their voices. And that's what is also encouraging offline protests as well. And I think that's the beautiful part of the social media, is especially during these troubling times, that, you know, a lot of people are encouraged to see one offline protest, seeing it is happening in one city, and then they are also encouraged to do the same in their own city. So I guess it's really important to keep doing what you are doing, and don't feel that, I mean, actually everything what Alia said, I'm actually repeating the same.
No, I completely agree. I think it's, you know, taking advantage of a circle of influence and sort of like pushing it out there. Don't lose hope. You can do what you can do, whatever big, small, or little it is. You don't know the kind of impact it'll make. At the end of the day, do as much as you think you can. That is your impact. Keep amplifying those voices, keep that momentum up.
And mess around with the algorithm on Instagram. Post pictures of pandas in between, post pictures of flowers in between if you have to. Mess around with it.
Give yourself a breather.
Yeah, I actually wanted to say that, you know, like, call out social media companies who are censoring these voices, and, you know, call out their algorithms and their, you know, automation tools, because those tools are biased. And I think it's very important for users to know that how this censorship is taking place. So yeah, I mean, whatever Alia is suggesting, please do that.
Yeah, and Alia, could you also just specify how, like, I've noticed that people are putting different characters into words that spell out Gaza or Palestine, so that the full word is not spelled out, but they're using like symbols in between to break up the word.
Yeah, so use emojis, use you know, different characters for A's and S's and T's and stuff, you know, substitute with different characters, you know, whether you're spelling out Israel or Palestine or Gaza or West Bank. And when you're retweeting the people who are on ground, whether it's Muhammad Ali Kurd, or it's, you know, Ahmed Shahab al-Din, or whoever it is that you're following, Walina al-Safin, Muhammad Safin, there's so many. I can actually tweet out a list of amazing Palestinian on-ground journalists that you should be following. Amplify their voices. You know, they're all on Instagram, they're all on Twitter, they're all on Facebook, and go around the censorship. You know, like, so you post 2 shares, then the third share posts like a picture of, like, I don't know, of like a frog, or like a, you know, or flower or something. I post pandas. I'm a panda enthusiast. Somebody may know. So I like to post pictures of pandas. You know, so just go around it, mess around with the special characters, use emojis, but keep getting your voices out there. It's really important. You have no idea what it means to Palestinian people, whether they're of the diaspora or they're people sitting inside the West Bank or confined to Gaza, what it means to them to have global support. I cannot stress this enough that you don't know what it means to them. It means the world to them. My editor is from Gaza. His wife is from Gaza. They both have family members still inside Gaza, and every night is havoc on them. But just knowing that people are supportive and people are, helping the cause and, helping amplify voices, it makes such a difference.
Well, that's a really good answer. Does anyone else want to say some final words before we wrap up here? Okay, so we went 10 minutes over. I appreciate that you took out a few extra minutes, panelists. I appreciate it. I think we got to answer some very important questions. And I just want to reiterate that the NewsRun and the Tempest teamed up for this campaign because we both have a common goal to empower communities through access to quality information. And I feel like our attendees today got that quality information. And I'm so grateful to our panelists who are able to be here today. And Alia, I know that you were on emergency coverage for Gaza and you still took out the time.
I'm on shift right now, so I have to go because I need to get back to work now.
All right, you're done here. Okay, we are letting you go. Get back to work. I hope our attendees walked away learning something new. Nighat and Erum, thank you so much. And yeah, thank you everyone for being here. And that's it. We're done. All right.
Take care. Thank you
Thank
for
you
having
for
me.
having us.
Bye.
This is great.